Hello everybody, thank you very much for tuning in, really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe and all that. I know I keep going on about it, but it does really help, so if you could, that would be much appreciated. But yeah, aside from that, thank you all very much, and let's get into the main topic for today's video, shall we?
So, for today, we're going to be talking about these little fellas here. Not necessarily just the ramshorns, but snails in general. We are going to be focusing on the ones that people like to refer to as the pest snails. Not so much like your ornamental snails, like your mystery snails and apple snails and that. More the kind of smaller cleanup crew type snails that are usually found in a lot of aquariums. So the thing with these guys is pretty much every aquarium is going to have them at some point. It would be very rare for an aquarium never to have to deal with snails ever. There is a few exceptions, like, so for example, this tank here never gets snails because if any snails do make their way in there in a plant or on a rock or something, the fish will eat them straight away, so we don't have to deal with it. Same, you know, if you've got pea puffers or something like that. But for the most part, if you've got an aquarium with, like, say you got community fish or something, you're going to get snails. And there's a lot of different types. So the first ones are these ramshorn snails here. They got like this circular looking shell, a shell that looks like a ram's horn, if you will. But yeah, these circular shells, they're usually red. I've seen overseas you can get like brown, not brown, blue ones. But we get the red or the brown ones in New Zealand for the most part. So yeah, that'll be the number one. Number two would be the Malaysian trumpet snail, which is like these guys here. This tank is infested with them. So like there's that guy there. So that would be the trumpet snail. And then the next one would be these ones here that I'll show you right now. These guys here would be the other ones, which are the what we call like the pond snails or the bladder snails. They're a little bit harder to see. I don't actually have any bigger ones. They do get about the same size as the rest, but I did have a look around the shop now and I can't seem to find any bigger ones. These ones actually live in a lot of filters a lot of the time, I find. So I got those ones out of here, out of the sump for the African cichlid tank, but that's those guys. And these three would make up the vast majority. I'm sure there's some other that I'm missing or something, but these are the vast majority of the snails, the pest type snails that we get in the aquarium, at least as far as New Zealand goes. So in my opinion, snails are actually great for an aquarium. The only problem is a lot of people do find they don't aesthetically like them, like not aesthetically pleasing, which basically means they just don't like the look of them, but that's how it goes. But I think they're actually like fine, and usually if you are managing the aquarium sort of actively, I guess, you're not going to really have a problem with them kind of exploding in population and taking over everything. The only one is, I find the trumpet snails tend to get going a lot better. They're the ones that I personally don't like at all. They just aesthetically look bad, and I just don't like them. But the bladder snails and the bladder snails and the ramshorn snails, I think actually look really cool, and I love growing little colonies in my tanks. They are really easy to breed if you want to, and especially the ramshorns. Like, you're not gonna be able to sell them for lots, but like around here, like fish stores take them, might give you like a plant in return or something, and it doesn't really take anything. But I think they're really cool, and they're a great way to, like, I don't like the whole cleanup crew mentality of like having a fish to do your job for you, but they are a fish that will do your job for you in the sense that they'll help scavenge little bits of food that the other fish miss, or they're going to break down like and eat leaves that might fall off your plants and that kind of thing. And the other thing is they're another sort of type and layer of activity that you wouldn't normally get in your aquarium. I find particularly little kids especially just absolutely love seeing snails underwater because it's so like, what? You can have a snail in your aquarium? And it like blows their mind. So if you've got little kids, I think it's a fantastic option. But a lot of people do stress about having snails, like, oh, how do I get rid of them? Are they gonna, number one, are they gonna cause harm? Which is a no, they're not gonna cause any damage. And then number two, are they gonna like overpopulate and create too much waste? I do find this is a bit of a non-problem. If the snail
population is not going out of control, in that you're not overfeeding the tank, there's not a whole bunch of plants dying and breaking down and everything like that, then the waste problem is kind of going to just manage itself, in the sense that, like, so if you imagine a snail, right, like, they're not that big, but they're mostly shelled, so like their actual body mass is so tiny, and even if you have heaps of them, there's not going to be enough to really make any difference in terms of like the waste production of the entire aquarium. It's kind of just going to be one of those things where, like, yeah, is it more than nothing? Sure, but is it enough? Is it like much compared to like a fish or something? Not really. So yeah, I really wouldn't stress about it, and they are going to be helping, because it's like the... Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Sorry, there's... But yeah, it's not really gonna matter that much, and it's one where you can keep on top of it. What I'd say is, if you're, you know, when you're doing your water changes, like gravel vacuuming, you're not overfeeding, all this kind of thing, the snails are only really gonna eat the stuff that you miss, like stuff down the back, and like I said, with the pond snails being in the filter and that. And I mean, that's only gonna help, really. It's just kind of like the stuff that you're not really seeing, that they're going to be breaking down a bit further, so it's not just sitting there completely decaying. They're kind of taking some of the nutrients out of it by eating it, if that makes sense. So I think that's a really good option, and I think particularly for like a planted aquarium, you definitely do want snails. Even if it's just like a handful of ramshorns, just to polish off the little bits, that, because you're never going to see everything, especially in a planted aquarium, because there's just, quite frankly, too much going on. There's too much stuff that you're not going to be able to see, like tucked down the back of the plants. And they will help. They're good for helping manage. They're good little kind of sidekicks, is the way I like to think of it. Like, they help you do your job better instead of doing your job for you. So I think they're a great option. The only thing is, if, like I said, a lot of people don't like the way they look, and that's fine. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, if you do have them already, how do you get rid of them? You know, you have them, you hate them, you just want to be rid of them. How do you do it? And there is a few options. The first one is, that you'll see talked about a lot, is like things that'll eat snails, so like loaches and puffers and that. And I'm really not a fan of this option, because I think you should be keeping fish to... I think fish should be kept sort of in of themselves because they're cool, not because they're going to eat, you know, snails, or like do a job for you. If you like loaches anyway, of course, feel free to chuck them in, but I don't think getting loaches is going to be the best idea, because then you're going to be stuck with a bunch of fish you don't particularly want, because they've dealt with a problem in the past. But it is an option if that's something you're interested in anyway. The next one is going to be I would do it. It's kind of like the second option out of the three I do, is copper. So like, you can use copper, copper-based medications, or sometimes they sell copper based like snail poisons. And the best way I can kind of explain it is, basically, snails are allergic to copper. If you're dosing it right, it's not going to be any danger to the fish. Copper is used a lot of times in the marine aquarium to get rid of external parasites, and it's like the same idea. It's basically the snails will all die. It is a little bit more dangerous than the next option, which is going to be dosing with flubendazole, which is fish. It kills worms and fish. Again, parasites, but it kills most of the internal parasites. So you can like chuck some of that in, and that's going to kill any parasites. Any of the specific parasites it treats for is going to kill in your fish, so that's a bonus. And yeah, again, essentially snails are allergic to it, so they'll all die. If you are doing this, I would be careful, just because having a bunch of dead snails decomposing is obviously going to create some ammonia spikes. So you just want to make sure that your system can handle that. Maybe just make sure water changes. Not feed the fish as much to limit the amount of waste, but it's not... I wouldn't say it's a stress, like a big stress. I'd say you'll be perfectly fine doing that. So I hope that kind of little overview, or like guide, gives you guys a good starting space when it comes to the aquarium snail world. More talking about the pest snails, at least insofar as what we get in New Zealand, what the snails that are available in New Zealand are. But I mean, I don't think we should be thinking about them as pest snails. We should be thinking about them as little sidekicks, basically, because they do help, they do a job. So hey, can't complain. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. If you liked it, please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. But otherwise, thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next one. Love ya. See ya.